Welcome to Own It, the podcast where we talk to real estate thought leaders about embracing your strengths, taking your career to new heights, and owning your future. I'm Hillary Saunders, co-founder and chief broker officer at Side, and I'm excited to be joined today by my good friend, Casey McLeod, who literally just walked through our next guest's art gallery at the Sacramento airport. Welcome, Casey.
Thanks, Hillary. And I did. I just got back from an NAR meeting, and sure enough, at the Sacramento International Airport, there's this awesome art gallery for our guests today. And it's great, too, because when I bring my kids to the airport, all they want to do is they want to go in there, they want to get a picture, they want me to send it to them, they want to post it on social media. It's a lot of fun.
It's awesome. It's not just full of colorful cows either. There's other things.
There is more than just the colorful cow, but that might be the most famous piece in there.
So Tim Collom is our next guest, and he is the genius behind House in Sacramento. He's not only a fine artist, he's an amazing philanthropist. He and his team have given over $200,000 to firefighters, $100,000 to frontline workers, another $500,000 to other charities through collaborations with his art projects and other community events. Those are just some of his accolades. Casey, you want to tack on a couple others?
Well, I will say, if you're in the real estate space, I think being a brand ambassador for amazing brands like Lululemon and Louis Vuitton, that's going to be a little unconventional for real estate marketing. But he's taken what he's learned from some of the best of these huge, great companies, and he's applied it to real estate. I mean, he's gone from a team that was already doing amazing work, 4 agents doing $94 million a few years ago, to now a team of 20 plus agents doing over $300 million in production in the downtown Sacramento market.
He's been on the Real Trends best list for the last 3 years. He's a great dad, good friend.
And he's just an expert at branding. I mean, I don't think there's any other way to put it about him.
Yeah. Well, let's talk branding and bring on Tim Collom. Tim, welcome to our wonderful podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you.
So excited to be here. Thank you. Thank you guys so much.
I think I might be your biggest fan because I have your shirt on, your coffee table book. My mom might be your biggest fan.
She's for sure the biggest fan. She's like just such a great supporter in general. But yeah, like I'm honored. I'm honored to be a coffee table, but like have that, it's super cool. You get a lot of different people that say different things with that. But your mom to me is like, she's paramount. She definitely is just one of those people, like just such a good human being. So yeah.
She's going to be so excited to listen to this podcast.
Oh, she's like, I might be her biggest fan. That's the thing. We might just talk about your mom the whole podcast and just be like, where'd she go? What's going on? All that. No. I'm interested. I need to actually talk to her live instead of it's through social media nonstop. And then I'm like, I've never talked to her. I have to pick up the phone and call her. That's the key. That's what we're doing.
Okay. That's for the next podcast. We'll do that another time.
But
yes, Casey.
Real quick, whose art gallery did you just see yesterday at the airport?
Oh, right. Somebody else had on this podcast, the three of us, somebody has an art gallery. It's not me. I can't do art.
That's right. I saw an art gallery. I think it was Tim Collom's art gallery at the Sacramento International Airport yesterday.
Man, you guys just make me feel way too good. That's for sure.
So you have, I don't even know where to start with this. Honestly, Tim, there's so much to unpack. But let's start with, how did you get into real estate? We'll get into co-branding, co-marketing, having an art gallery, all that. How did you even start in real estate? Sure.
So I think no one ever really knows that they want to be in real estate, or they talk about being in real estate when you grow up. Like I look at my goals way back when, and I wanted to be like, work for the FBI, cool things like that. And I wasn't like, I'm like 5'9", and I'm average at sports at best. Like I wasn't great. So I always wanted to be a professional athlete, but that didn't work out too. But I think that for me, I was around a lot of different athletes in Menlo Park. And I would, before school, I would go and fetch balls and help some of the 49ers train. And I was like, man, I'm going to go learn about being a physical therapist. And so in high school, I was around fitness a lot, and I was around a lot of professional athletes like Jerry Rice and Joe Montana and all these different people. And I got a job when I was at Sac State as their strength and conditioning coach for Sac State, the tennis team, and then some of the other teams. And ultimately, I had a personal training client. And long story short, he was in real estate, and he says, you got to give it a year. And I was 21 years old, and I told my mom, and my mom was not supportive of it all. She goes, you don't even need to go to college. You don't need to do these things. Like, I don't understand. You're just going to stay up in Sacramento, and you could go to like all the startup companies. And my family was a big tech background. So my dad and a lot of people, they worked for Google and Apple and early on days, like crazy stuff. And I could easily get a job. And then I was like, I'm just going to stay in Sacramento and kind of pave my own way and be a real estate agent or residential real estate agent, which to my family, like, I'm the first male not to go to Stanford out of my whole family. And we're talking great grandfather, dad, everyone went there. And then I just said, like, I'm going my own route. And ultimately, stayed in Sacramento for a year or 2 years. And in real estate, I just landed in this one area, and it was older homes. And I just loved working with people. And that was it. And I was 21 years old, had no idea what I was doing. Like, and I think a lot of 21-year-olds kind of go, what am I going to do? And I worked for somebody that was very driven, and he was one of those guys that saw an opportunity with me where he could kind of mold me. And 4 years later, it was a boutique company. I was running his company, and basically he kind of phased out. But I started out, my first split was 28%. So
Ooh.
basically, yeah. And I made $200,000 in my first year, and he made $800,000. So I just knew how to sell houses. Like, it was,
You knew how to do
crazy.
math.
I was great.
You
I was
didn't
not
know-
very good at negotiations.
I was
for
going to
myself.
say, you weren't good at negotiating a
No, I
split,
was
were you?
not very good. But I learned for 4 years under somebody, and I did at that time, like $200,000 for a 21 to 22, 23-year-old was really good money. And I was building my name, and I was learning from him. And ultimately, they ended up, his family got a divorce, but long story short, then I moved to another boutique brokerage. And so I got into real estate by accident, like, which is, I think a lot of people, they're like, what are we going to do? And I just said, I'm going to try this. I knew I had done the strength and conditioning for Sac State and personal training. And I knew that was going one path. And I was like, I got to try something in business. And I love people. So that was the short, long story is that I started in the Bay Area, catching balls and fetching balls for Jerry Rice and all these people. I learned what they did. I got a strength and conditioning coach job at Sac State. And then one of my clients was a real estate agent. And that was it. So,
That's amazing.
It's weird.
You know what? The heyday of the Niners, man. The good stuff.
So good.
Oh,
so
the
good
stuff.
Don't
tell that to Casey. Casey's eyes are rolling. He's like Bengals all the way.
55-10. Was it 55-10 or was that the Broncos? No, they got that's right. The John Taylor catch.
Yeah, I was going to say that was a very close game. That was a minute to go, the drive. Rather not talk about that. Thanks, Tim.
Sorry, Casey.
Hey, you
guys have cool helmets. I mean, Bengals have good helmets, right?
I mean, look at that. That's awesome.
Good helmet, bad uniform. That's
Whatever.
it.
Well, you know what? Let's talk about how somebody had a vision in you and kind of inspired you to go the real estate direction, and now you are the face, the name of this amazing company in Sacramento that is just killing it.
No,
so
thank you.
I mean, it's kudos to you and your leadership. So how are you taking it from solo agent in the boutique company to now, how many agents do you have at house?
We're like 24. We went from 4 to 24 in 3 years. So
wow,
that's it's been a whirlwind. I've been with 3 companies, and the second company was a boutique company, and I'd been there for 15 years. And I'm a gold watch guy. Like, I'll stay there as long as I can. But I found that during the pandemic that their marketing and social media and their philosophy was not aligned with mine. And I think what happened was that I actually just, was exploring. And then I don't know how I came across Side. It was like I saw a partner Kelly Griggs speak at something, and then she talked about something, and I was like, okay, it sounded like her life was pretty chaotic, actually, just because I was like, she has so many different balls in her. I'm like, there's no way I'm managing this many people. I have four agents. I'm good to go, that type of thing. And then I came across and just looked into it. And then actually it was Hillary that was one of the big people that I talked to that I had such a confidence in, because it was where you just came off like in a great way for me, going like, we have a great company in the sense that there's a lot of professionals, and you could tell that she had talked to a lot of professionals. And in some ways, like, I've always been recruited by other companies, and Hillary wasn't recruiting me. It was kind of one of those things. We had a great conversation. She was just herself. And I was like, I kept coming back to it. But overall, I started a company in, I think it was 2000, October 27th or October 28th or whatever it was. And it's just been going since then. And I think for me, I feel that we had something going with four agents, but then people wanted to join us once they saw what we were doing. And that was the key. Like, once I could take the training wheels off and start marketing and doing what I wanted to do with a logo and with a brand and a name, then it was kind of like, okay, let's go. And that's where I think right now the marketing side of what I do is kind of where I enjoy it the most. And it shows, my jam. But I think overall, like, I think that the company was formed based on me being not as happy with how things were going in the traditional brokerage, I guess, so to speak.
So we alluded to at the beginning of the podcast that you have a lot of co-branding, marketing. Like, that seems to be your wheelhouse, your genius as far as your artistic background. So before we dive into house and where it is now, can you give us a little story of your fine art life?
I've always been super creative, and I get bored really easily. I think it comes down to my dad and mom. We didn't have cable or a VCR. And back then, people don't even know what a VCR is right now, but it's, video recording machine and that type of thing. But we had three options. We could play music, we could paint, or we could make art, or we would go outside and play sports. And that was it. Those were our three things. So my brothers are musically inclined. And then with art, I've always liked to be creative. I like to draw things. I would always doodle in class. I'd get busted on that. And I'd try to just tell a story with what I just like to stay busy, I guess. And I think that being creative is one of my things, 100%. So long story short, I got into, I've been in art since I was a kid. And then I landed in Sacramento and got aligned with some very famous and really well-known artists. And then I started to learn from them as I was in my 20s and 30s. And ultimately, I was really shy and really a person that would keep real estate and art separated, because I never wanted my real estate clients to be like, well, where's my realtor? Is he like out painting right now? Or is he, basically trying to sell my house? And so I always kept them separate. And then when I hit about 30, 35, I started to put both of them together, and people would call me the realtor artist. Oh, you're the artist. Well, I learned real quick that art was much more interesting than real estate to other people. And if you Google my name, you'll see just a ton of art articles. And it's hard because I'm like, man, here I am wanting to be this real estate agent that does all these things, but art is always in its way. But I've learned, long story short, to try and like use both together and collaborate. And then I think the next question would be is that I've started to build relationships with my art with existing companies and companies that are well known. And that's been kind of the one thing that's a little bit different for what I've done. And it's really simple in some ways that I get in the door with some of these bigger companies, and whether they're Lululemon, whether it's West Elm, Wells Fargo, Louis Vuitton, whoever it is, one of the things that I always ask them is that they'll ask me about compensation. They'll ask me about what it takes, all of those things. And I'll say, I'd actually just want to meet with your marketing director. And so I'll meet with them for an hour and go up to Lululemon and learn from the best of the best in marketing and say what works. And I learned a lot from Lululemon on how they advertise, how they don't advertise, how one word is very powerful, how their images are, how they are diverse. how there's so many different things that go into those companies. And these guys have budgets way bigger than mine. And they're the brightest of the bright, but I have this little secret that I paint, and I do things that they want to kind of co-brand with. So there's been opportunities I learned from every company that I work with. And I always ask that. I always say, hey, I want to meet with the marketing people. They have no idea what I want to do with them, but I want to ask them. And then I transition that into how I sell real estate as well. So weird. But and I've always been a kid that stays up late at night watching commercials. And like I could tell you, all these different things with marketing and advertising. And that's been kind of my jam. And I think being creative in anything you do, if you stay creative, you'll never be bored. And that's been one of my things with real estate. I think you can get bored if you just keep selling houses over and over and over and over, but you want to be creative in how you do it and what you do in general. And I've kind of melded those together. And I'm in the process of doing that. I have no idea what I'm doing, to tell you the truth. But that's the biggest thing right now. So
what example of a couple of things that you learned from those marketing execs that just really resonated with you or stuck with you?
Yeah, with naming a company, everyone always wants to come up with some crazy name. And if you look at some of these companies, like if you look at Google or you look at Twitter or you look at Lululemon, they're weird names. And I was like, what could I do that's one word that makes sense? And when I build these relationships, and I had this logo and I just have this little picture of a house. And it was like the dumbest, smartest idea I've come up with, where I was like, I was so dumb. And I'm like, and here's why it's dumb. I'm like, I'm just going to name it house, right? And I go just house for one word, very simple, as clean as we possibly can, without saying, oh, I'm going to be Sacramento's best or Premier Sacramento. I didn't want to limit myself. But with that, I realized that after I came up with this awesome name that I thought would be good and very simple, that if you Google house, there's a million things. I could be an interior designer. People would say, oh, it's not very smart, all of those things. But what I learned is if you come up with something that's simple and memorable from these companies, which they did, Lululemon, Google, Twitter, we can go through all these successful different names. It's just keeping it very simple. And I think then you get behind it, and then it's just repetition and consistency, and you start to see a brand over and over again. And that's basically it. So Casey's idea of creating a company called Casey, the very best real estate agent in Placerville, is not a good idea. I don't know. He's really talented. So I won't say anyone that's a bad idea. But I think that for me, I'm a simple guy.
I just need Tim to do the marketing for me, and no matter what, it's going to be a success.
Yeah, I get behind. I would make you, yes. Like Casey would change your life, if you call him. But I do feel that it all goes hand in hand. Businesses that you learn from and their creative part of how they come across to their consumer, and the consumer being that are our customers, right? What do people think of our brand? What do people think of us when they see us? And I had been in the business, so it's my 23rd year. I've kind of done the same thing over and over again, and I've stayed in my lane. And I have not gotten into lending. I haven't gotten into other things. I just sell houses. That's it. And I've just stayed in that lane my entire career. And ultimately, that's been, I think, one thing that I've learned too is that you do what you're good at. And some of these companies, like Louis Vuitton, is not making drinks. They're not going out and making other things that are not associated with their brand. Now they will go and make shoes. They'll make handbags, and they'll also make watches, but they all have something that they stay in a line with. And I think for residential real estate, I've always stayed in my own lane, and I've gone 100 miles an hour in that lane. So that's been the crazy part. In the last 3 years, it's elevated since I started this company though. And that's where it's gotten crazy. It's in a good way. And also, I've learned a lot too, as well.
But you don't just sell houses. You also lead a company and have, a large number of associates that are working with you. Mm-hmm. How do you step into that leadership role in guiding those who want to join House?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think that I want to work with, I hate to say this, but I want to work with people that are like me and that are driven. And I like working with my friends in some ways. And I think that a lot of agents that I've come across over the years they've become friends and people that I look up to. And ultimately, I created a place that they can work, that I lead by example. If you call me in the morning, it'll be at 4 or 5 in the morning or 6 in the morning, I'll be there. And then I also paint late at night, and I'll pick up my phone and 1 or 2 in the morning sometimes. And I have a kind of a short sleep window of 4 to 5 hours a night. And that's something that I don't try to do that. I'm not like Elon Musk, and I'm not like these other guys that are like trying to say they're so, like Mark Wahlberg's really into waking up at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock and any of that. I just don't require a lot of sleep. And I love what I do on both sides with art and real estate. So I think for me, what I've done with other people following is that they go, I think that I have someone that works really hard at making sure that our company is out there in the best way possible. And I think that what's happened is that a lot of companies have gotten bigger and big, and they hire as many people as they can. And this is exactly like we're the biggest. Everyone always talks about how, they're the fastest growing, they're the biggest, all of those things. And for me, I was always focused on quality as opposed to quantity. And that's been a big deal. And then once I have one $40 million agent join, then I have another $40 million agent. And then now I have 5 $40 million agents. So we have an all-star team. And each year I tell them we win the championship, and it's our job to stay together and not ask for more money or go do different things. Let's just stay and be good at what we're good at. And I would pick collaboration all day long over competition. So what happens is once you walk in the door, no matter how big your ego is or what you think you are, we all collaborate in this room. And that's something that's totally different. So if you're just around a bunch of high-level producers in different geographic areas in Sacramento, California, then you'll find that we all learn marketing, and we all try to out-market each other. We all come up with different ideas, and we have a bunch of very bright people. And I think that's been something that's been very unique. So for me, I've loved to lead by example, have a group of people that have the same values that I do, and that are so talented that I'm always learning from them too. So that's as simple as it gets.
That's awesome. And Casey, you've seen the house brand up there because you live somewhat near Sacramento, right? I mean, you're in the boonies, but
I'm in the boonies. I'm about 45 minutes out of Sacramento. But no, I mean, you see house, they're everywhere. Tim's in the news. He's all over social media. You find house real estate everywhere you go. I mean, again, the different news companies, they're interviewing him. I see him I always take a picture and I'll send it to him. The last one I did, it wasn't the best shot. He didn't like that one very much. So good thing I didn't post that one on social media. You're welcome.
He takes the worst picture where you're just like, your face is so like, and then you're just in this bad spot. I'm like, you can hit the phone a couple times, and then he sends me that, and then or it's like,
I could have paused the TV, but I didn't do that either.
He doesn't give it.
Take a quick picture.
No, doesn't care.
But I mean, just everything that Tim has done. He's built such an incredible brand in the area. I mean, he's known to be the one to go talk to because he's so successful. The marketing, he's out there, he's in the public's eye. And so he has become like a voice of real estate in the Sacramento market.
So the change over the last couple of years has been real focused, I think, on teams and how teams function, right? And they can take different roles. You can take different directions. Some people want to grow a mega team. Others are very stealth in how they're hiring, buyer's agent, listing agent, whatever. What is your team makeup, and how do you see it transforming over the next couple of years? So
right now my team makeup is that if we have 20 people, we have about 5 of them that produce about $40 million or higher. And then we have some that are 5 that are about 20 to 30, right in that range, or 15 to 30. And then we have a lot of new people that are 5 million or less. And I think that it's very smart to have an intentional balance that it's my job and the other agents' jobs that are in the $40 million category to be able to teach the people that are there as well, as far as the newer agents, and vice versa. And for instance, I don't drink, and in Alcoholics Anonymous world, or an AA, basically the person that has come in and they have 3 days sober are almost more important than the people that are 15 years sober, just because they're going through the hardest part, and they remind those people what it's like. And it's no different in real estate than in real estate that you have to kind of go, you know what, at the end of the day, there's all these people that, go, okay, I'm this, and they always focus on their productivity and what their awards are, and their, no offense, Casey, and their numbers and things like that. But ultimately, what happens is that you learn from the new people the most. So we have a great diversity of people that are new and old. And so where it's going, I think that one thing that I've learned with what I've done, and I think it's so important, is I've been able to take my brand and create my own. And then what I do with it is that if I establish, instead of spending $2,000 a month on a billboard, I can go and get a storefront and I put it on the busiest street possible. So in Sacramento, it's J Street. 8,000 cars go by that. And it's 1,000 square feet. It's nothing big, but it's basically in a neighborhood that is where we serve. And we put it on a busy intersection or wherever a lot of cars go by. And then we do that again, only 4 miles away. And some people would argue, oh, you know what? You're just creating competition for yourself. And, it's cannibalism of your company. And I disagree. I think that if you have multiple house real estates all over the Sacramento region, instead of paying for all these advertising things and having these offices, then you can take 5 to 10 people and say, you can all work from these spots. They're all yours. There's no, hey, here's your desk. And it's like the DMV and you walk into a traditional office and it's just not like that. And we have a collaborative workspace that all of them, they all have their own snacks. They have everything. But I think what happens is if people are driving around, they see that the house brand is all over Sacramento with the signage and also the storefronts. So of course, like we'll open probably number 3 and number 4 very shortly. Ideally, we want 5 to 10 in each one as far as agents are concerned. So we're not getting too big, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And something I want to add there real quick, when Tim's talking about these, 4 different $40 million producers and the volume that these agents are doing, the Sacramento market is one of the most affordable markets in California. So this isn't some market where every house is, $1 million plus. Tim and his team are selling in a very affordable part of the state. So these numbers just mean that they're pumping out a lot of units out there. So Tim, how many units did you guys sell us last year? I know you're big on stats.
Yeah, it was last year was 333. We did roughly $300 million in volume. So our average is right around $1 million. So we have a lot of $500,000 buyers. We have a lot of $1.5 to $2 million buyers. That's kind of the makeup. I mean, we definitely have sold some $4 million houses. That's really high for Sacramento. But I think the best part is that the sales volume, being in Sacramento where we are, I don't think wherever you are, I mean, I always used to complain and make excuses. And I'd be like, well, if I was in the Bay, if I was in Atherton, where I grew up, or Palo Alto, or any of those areas, I mean, I would just absolutely kill it. But I think that what happens is you can do really well in any part of the country. And I think that if you apply the same type of diligence to running a company and having a belief system that no matter where we are, we can compete with the Newport Beaches, the San Francisco's, anywhere around the country, our numbers are pretty strong. And I do think we do a lot of transactions, but we also do a lot of transactions at a pretty high volume in the sense of being where the median price is still upwards of $900 to $1 million. And I think that's where I've been surprised based on our success, based on what the capabilities have been the last 3 years. I've been truly this is crazy, because we started at 94 million in our first year with 4 people. Then on the second year, we went to 212. And the third year, we're at 333 transactions. They're pretty much they kind of go in hand because it's $1 million per property is somewhat of our average. But to go.
So you're exuding a lot of confidence, rightfully so. I mean, rightfully so. Did you always have confidence, or did you ever have any kind of limiting beliefs in yourself or your ability to achieve amazing success?
Yeah, I think the confidence part is that we have a system and a belief system in ourselves that's really unique on how we approach real estate. And that's the best part. I think that's something to me where I'm I'm actually really excited for the next 5 years. And I know everyone's a little bit more, really going, oh, this market's really going to be tough, and all the interest rates and all these negative things. I think I'm always looking for the positive parts, and I think that's what sellers and buyers want. They want a confident real estate agent. They want someone that knows they can sell a property, you know.
Well, and I think similar to, your art, right? You don't start with a pre-made plan. It's usually a blank piece of paper or a blank canvas, and you make something out of nothing.
Totally. And there's so many failures, Hillary. I mean, that's the thing. And then I know like something about you, like where, I know that you do spin and you swim. And I sure as hell would not get near you on both of those subjects because I know you'd be really good at it. And I just know how people's personalities are. And I think that for us, if you stay in your lane, you know what you're good at. I think there's a lot of failures too, just like with art, that you could start something and you go, man, like art's not good or bad, right? It just isn't. Like some people always say, oh, it's bad art or it's good art. It's just whether it worked or whether it didn't work. And that's what you have to look at. You got to try it, right? So same thing with marketing. Like I can put up a billboard and I go, yeah, it's such a good idea. It's like Jerry Maguire when he writes big thing in that movie and he's like, oh, I got it and all this stuff. And I'm sober, so I can't be like, oh, I had a drink or anything like that. But long story short is that I think that if you don't try something, you'll never know if it works or it doesn't work. And that's what's been, for me, a big thing is there's been a lot of failure. And there's been a lot in art too, where some things just don't work. I think it's the greatest painting ever. And, Victoria will be like, that thing's just sitting, it's just not working. So, and you have to reduce it like a house, which is really weird. You're like, yeah, it didn't sell, so I got to reduce it $500 or I got to do this, there's all these things. So anyway, I think that it's, there's so many unique parallels to being creative and trying things. And I think so many people are getting ready to get ready. And I think you have to just put yourself out there.
Getting ready to get ready, I think, is a common theme, right? It's the putting your foot forward, getting off the starting block and just going and dealing with what comes, whether it's good, bad, ugly, it's all growing. So how do you coach or what do you tell someone who's relatively new to house, who's kind of has trepidations of getting into it?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have fear when they come in, and then there's intimidation because it's like you look at realtors, they have all their fancy cars, they just like walk in rooms, there's a lot of confidence going, there's a lot of things going, and I want to get to know my agents. And I think one thing I've done is I've said, listen, I'm really big into goals and I'm really big into the act of understanding who you are, and I need you to write 100 goals. I need you to write down 10 goals per category of fun and adventure, what you want to own, where you want to travel, like relationships, business. I can go through all the categories. And ultimately, I say, I need that in 2 weeks. And we sit down and we go over some of those things. Now, some people they have all these disc profiles and they have all these fancy things. But for me, I want to get to know them. And if all their goals are around finances and what they want and all of those things, you kind of get a chance to see how you would coach them. And do they work really well with the checklist? Do they work really well with how are they afraid to do different things? And then some people just are really wanting to be around people, and you learn that. But I think that for me, I really get to know my agents and I understand, where they want to go. And I think a lot of them have these hurdles that they believe that they can't do something. And I think that for me, it's been a process of letting them know on my failures of what's worked and what hasn't for 20 something years. There's formulas for everyone. And I think that the one thing you have to show up is with a positive attitude. And I can't have anyone that doesn't work with their full potential. I think overall, it's just getting to know the people that you're working with and asking them what their goals are. What do they want out of this company? What can I do to help them? And then I keep them accountable.
Say you bring on a team member and they're just not the right fit for your culture of house, and they're actually making everybody else's life miserable. Has that happened? And what have you had to do?
I've had one person, and that was the only time out of the 20 something that just didn't show up and just said she was something and she didn't, and she just would never show up and never participate in the meetings. Yeah. Rarely do I have that problem because I'm very strict on who we hire and how we do it. And I think that it goes through a few different processes of hiring with my business associates and making sure they get the same feeling I do. And then we say a lot of no's. So there's a lot of no's that are there.
Well, when my plans don't work, I just blame Casey. It's really good. Right. It's very convenient.
So, but speaking of plans, so your family's plan was not for you to get into real estate.
No.
Obviously, your mom, like you mentioned earlier, wasn't a big fan of the idea. I don't know how they felt about you getting the art, but I'm curious, what does your family think about your career now?
Um, my mom's proud. Like my mom's honestly like my mom, and I've had to kind of get to that point, and my dad is too. And I feel like that route wasn't what everyone wanted in some ways. And I think that I've just kind of done things differently. I left. I didn't graduate from college. I left at Sac State with 2 classes to go, and basically got into real estate. And I was like, use the excuse, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. And my mom always gives me a hard time. Well, last year I won the Sac State President's Medal, which is the highest medal that they can give or whatever, based on my contribution with charity and stuff. And I'm like, does this get me anywhere? And she's like, no, you have to finish those 2 classes. Like she's really stuck on, and I get it, but I've kind of gone my own way. And I think I own it if I fail or succeed. But believe me, the .com boom in 2000 was much more appealing. And my uncle was one of the head attorneys for Google. And I mean, it was insane. And they're like, this is a sure thing. And they were probably right. So I'd probably be some wealthy, really high tech person right now, or right now I'm a real estate agent in Sacramento, California, painting cows. That's kind of it. That's the route that I'm at right now.
Those are expensive cows, though.
They can be sometimes if people will pay. I mean, I don't know. That's my fallback. That's why I'm like, that's the one thing I can do. You try and get 2 different things that you want 2 different types of industries, that you, in case something goes wrong, I can paint a cow, Hillary. That's it.
I will say it's the most colorful cow I've ever seen.
Thank you. Thank you.
But you going back to earlier when you made the really, I think, smart decision with the name of House Real Estate, and you come up with the use of House as a brand rather than going with your name. Now I know you have that as a co-marketing piece to your branding, but what is your long-term goal by not naming your company after yourself and coming up with a more generic name, which speaks to real estate very well with House Real Estate? What is your long-term goal?
I started with House Real Estate and the Tim Collom Realtor Group. And right now it's a dance between House is just so easy to talk about. But my own personal business, I have to make sure that I'm letting the public know that I'm still in the business. So it's very intentional on how I post and what I do. It's very authentic to what I'm actually doing. So I'm always going on listing appointments. I'm always with buyers and those things. But you can market a company so well that they forget that you're in real estate, and people will actually say, well, I know you just run a company now and you're not doing sales. And that's the farthest thing I want. I want to just be in doing everything and have the option to do whatever I'd like. I think a lot of people too have the goal of like, oh, I want a company that runs itself and I just collect checks and I'm not really involved anymore, and that's fine and I can sell it off. I don't have that same type of, I really like people. I like having the choice of going to work every day, dressing in a suit, doing what I need to do. And I think that I have some options, but it's a dance right now to go, okay, do we market House Knows Homes all over Sacramento? And it's really catchy and really cool. But then when I arrive, people are like, oh, you're Tim Collom, the artist. And I'm like, yeah, it's a little bit of a mixture, but it's working. We know that. But the problem that I have is that sometimes people, my competition, will say, well, he's just busy running a big team, or he's not involved as much as he used to be. And I have to combat that with like social media day-to-day posts, which works pretty well too.
That's fascinating, because I honestly did not consider the flip side, that the consumer, because you're into both avenues so deeply, would get confused or lost that, oh, you sell real estate also because you're the artist person. I always thought that, gosh, what a genius idea. Name a company something that then at the end of the day, one, you can really easily recruit to, because like you said, people are very into their own names in real estate. Or then create an entity that someday you can either pass down to your kids, merge, sell, do whatever, and get out of production if you wanted to.
Which is totally right. But I think as somebody that is sometimes operates from fear base, you're kind of like going, is my name still relevant 3 years down the road when there's this House Real Estate that's going, 1,000 miles an hour? you never probably get used to letting go of your own personal name. But I think what makes up for it is seeing how successful the other agents are and how they buy into how awesome our company is and what it means to be part of this selective group where it's just truly a family that collaborates. So for me, I still, to answer the question, it's a work in progress and I don't have a perfect answer for it. I love where I'm going, but I'm also like conflicted at times because if I'm Brad Pitt and I want to be a director and I want to be in my own movie too and be the actor as well, like where are you going with this thing?
Yeah.
And that's
a lot.
That's what's happening.
How'd you juggle being dad to a 2-year-old and an older child, plus being a leader in the company and being an artist? Like, what do you do for Tim time?
Oh man, that's great.
That's like a home improvement line right there. For those of you who are old enough to know that show.
That's a good one. Yeah, with Wilson, remember that guy and all. Yes. I think that to me has been the coolest part, and that's where I really have weighed on people that have kids and that I'm like, how do you do this? And I've asked Hillary, I've asked her, I've talked to Casey, I've talked to people, and I think that I asked like those questions especially the first 6 months. I am like, what am I doing? My kid's doing this. Like, I really wait on them, but it does ground you, and it also gives me a purpose. And I do think there's a house real estate that now there's other kids, and this week I brought my son the backstory. On social media, I took a picture, and he was at the office with me, and he
was a rock star. He was in his suit.
He's awesome. On Wednesday, he says, I don't want to go to a field trip. And I'm like, bullshit. I'm like, you're going to the field trip. He's like, no. I'm going to go, fine. You get in the suit, you're coming to work with me. And he goes, okay, sounds good. And it turned into that. And I can't put that on social media because I have parents that say, oh, you let your kids skip school and you get this. You can go down a whole path of whatever, right? But ultimately, he comes to work, he puts on a suit, everyone loves it, but it's us being authentic. And that shows in the community, hey, like these guys are normal human beings. But I think that's what parenting is all about, is just pivoting. And now I'm just more afraid of like what happens if something happens to these guys. And now there's a bigger responsibility. But I think for me, it is truly that I'm like way more tired than I've ever been in my life. Like I could stay up, like paint, do all these things, but I think the parenting part has been just such a game changer. And then you become more relatable, Yeah. I think that having a kid has been so incredible. And I think that you have to juggle. And then priority wise, you just are much more focused on, like when I go to a studio and paint, like that 2 hours it's on. And same thing with real estate. It's made me where I can't just, everything's time blocked and everything, like I can't just mess around anymore, and because I want to spend time with my kids, just like you guys do.
So what do you, give me a couple podcasts, books, shows, what do you lean on to for kind of inspiration or guidance or leadership?
So there's a Dr. Attia that someone gave me. My physical therapist was like, you got to kind of look at him. And, he talks about just levels of fitness and how people live a longer life. And I think that's been where I've listened to a lot of different podcasts. I don't read because I have so much ADHD, and creative wise, I always need to be in motion with art or whatever. I try to do two things at once, and which is going to sound weird, but like when I'm painting, I'm always making calls and I'm talking to clients, and they'll catch
at 1
me.
a.m.
Like not at 1. It shuts off at 10. I've called people at 10 or 11. They're like, it's late, Tim. And I do that, but I'm like, but I do definitely make a lot of calls. And now I'm kind of switching where I'm trying to find these weird times to work. And I've gotten up early at 4 a.m. And then I'm also like 2 hours of painting midday. And then I'm trying to make calls during that time. So for me, if I can listen to music or I can listen to a book of some sort or something that's someone's recommended. But overall, I think I'm into right now trying to find more time for personal relationships and really talking to people as like people and not in business.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, real estate's a relationship business, right? So
totally,
it's all about the community and helping the clients and really understanding their needs and not yours. So that fits perfectly.
And that's 100% like unintentional. Like I saw a video and I was pissed off at the fires that were happening. And then I just painted a picture and I put it out there and it went viral and all this crazy stuff. And then the frontline workers, I did something. And then what happens is that there's so much real estate and things that come back that way, which I never intended. And now like we're working with like kids and art supplies and making a run at that. And we're trying to do also law enforcement, which is a touchy subject because everyone loves firefighters, but law enforcement's tough, but law enforcement still needs a lot of support. So I've always gained a lot of relationships based on some of the extracurricular activities that I've done that I think are really good. And I think that's where teachers and firefighters and everyone will call me and they're like, oh, I bought your print 3 years ago or 4 years ago. And that's how they met me. It wasn't a marketing piece, wasn't anything else. It's just who you are as a person trying to give back or doing what you do.
I think what I'm hearing is it's be your authentic self, right? And you're
100%.
open about being, umpteen years sober, which is amazing. Congrats. And
Thank you.
Being just your genuine self. And it is funny because I was in Mexico on spring break and I'm watching Netflix, right? And one of the shows that I was watching, one of the surgeons had your scrub cap on. And I took a picture and texted it. Yeah. I'm like, what? You're just, it's awesome to see that it's that genuine, giving back spirit. And then it comes around. And it was just one of those moments. I was like, oh, it made me happy.
Oh, it's so sweet. And it's so sweet that you said that. It's like, I don't know, that just turned into something, where you're like, okay, let's raise money for the frontline workers for their scrub caps and let's throw some art on it and let's just see. And it was crazy. I've gotten and then Netflix called me and they said, do you mind if we use this? And then it's gone crazy. It, like my Wednesday night at 6 p.m., it was on. Like my phone was just like crazy. And the coolest part is there's been so many people that have had COVID that they couldn't talk to their nurse or they couldn't talk to their doctors, but they just saw my name on the cap and it would say Collom. And they said they saw the hearts and that was all that they did. And they called me and they've been like, hey, I survived, or this is what happened. This is what we saw. And the stories that have come out of that, like they're people that's not real estate related. It's in New Jersey, it's wherever it is. And it's been such a cool thing to happen, and it's just because I just think that like you can just, things just happen if you try and help people. I think that's the key, no matter what you do.
Yeah, 100%. And that is about the person at the end of the day, right? It's connecting and just being out there in the community and raising other people up. It comes
crazy.
around.
And art's so cool because you could do a painting, and I did a painting of all the nurses and doctors, and some lady bought it. I had no idea who it was, whatever. And it goes out the door and you feel it's kind of a weird feeling to be an artist because you let go of these paintings that you made. And then it ended up, the next time I saw it was down the road just last year. And then it was in NYU and it was in one of their big facilities with all the kids. And then you're like, oh, that like someone bought that, donated it to them, which I was like, that was crazy. Like, it's so crazy to see what things happen, and I think that being intentional in your community and just being a good person is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that at the end, like the end of everything is just the story of giving back to the community, cross marketing, using your innate talents or gifts or, what you're passionate about in your daily life. And it's all going to come full circle.
I think that's a great way to wrap it. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? And I don't have a degree. I didn't take any art classes. I just like what I do. And I think with real estate, it's the same thing. Like with people, I think that you talk about like when you do something over and over again and you do that for 20 years, you go, gosh, I really want to help as many people as I can and have a great experience. Yeah. And that's been really the one thing. And I think all of our agents have that same feeling too. They really enjoy that.
Absolutely. I think that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you, Tim. I know Casey is always overjoyed to be able to spend some time with you. You guys are like down the hill from each other. So I'm sure you guys hang out at the Kings games or something.
Yeah, I asked him. Next year, he's coming with me. Next year, as long as he doesn't wear a Bengals jersey, we'll be fine.
Don't worry. I'll be wearing the Kings jerseys.
Yes, for sure. Well, I've loved being on it. You guys have asked so many great questions in general. It's been awesome.
Well, we appreciate you, Tim. Thank you so much for being on our podcast, and cheers to all of your successes and all those in the future for House.
Oh, I love you guys. Thank you so much. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tim.
Well, that was inspiring, Casey.
Right? I mean, Tim has got to be one of the most authentic people I think I've ever met.
You know, it's amazing just the story of House in general, and coming up with a great brand name. He's clearly a brand strategist at heart, college degree or no. He's got that innate tie in with being able to market something very effectively.
And his use of social media. Yeah, I mean, he creates a simple but yet very identifiable brand. And then the way he promotes it everywhere. I mean, you can't be on any social media platform if you live in the Sacramento area and not see House Real Estate. So what he's done, what the rest of the team have done has been incredible.
I think a couple takeaways just for everybody in general is cross-marketing is great. Find your niche. Come up with a strategy that is very clean and simple. The less frills, almost the better, because there's less distraction. And really be true to yourself, whatever that looks like, and stick to.
When you're finding that niche, that's what it needs to be, something that you're passionate about.
Right.
Obviously, Tim's very passionate about both of the markets that he is involved in with art and with real estate and helping people. Don't just try to force something else that you want to be known for if it's not going to be authentic to who you are.
Right. Be your authentic self. And I think that's a wrap on the podcast today. So thank you all for listening. Tune in at our next podcast. And we love hearing from you. You can always email us at ownit@side.com with questions, comments, feedback, or questions for Tim. We're happy to answer those in the next podcast or respond to you directly. So thank you again.
See you, everybody.